Okay, hello. My name is Lance Ball, and today I want to show you a little bit about what I've been working on with Kubernetes and Knative and Node.js and Quarkus. I've been working on trying to get some kind of function as a service going on top of Knative. And so we're going to look at that today. I'm going to create two functions. They're going to respond to cloud events and cloud events only. One function will receive a cloud event from an external source. It will respond with a cloud event that is then passed along to the second function. So let's see how that works. First of all, what I want to do is have an event source that is just sending events into the system. And I've got one here called cronjob.yaml. And so I can do oc apply -f. I'm using OpenShift as my cluster, and so I'm using the OC command line, but this would work just fine on any regular Kubernetes cluster. So I'm going to create this cron job source, and there we go. Now I'm going to create a couple of triggers that will route the events to the places where I want them to go. So let's look at the node trigger first. I've got this node trigger, and as you can see, it's listening for events of type dev.knative.cronjob event, which is what comes out of a cronjob event source, and it sends those events along to a Knative service called nodefunc. That service doesn't exist yet, but just you wait, we'll get there. So let's do oc apply -f and create that trigger. And then we have a similar trigger for Quarkus. It's different only in the type of events that it's looking for. So it's looking for events of type function response from the source nodefunc. Again, we don't have the nodefunc source because we haven't created that yet, and we don't have the Quarkus source or Quarkus service that will be listening for these events coming from the node function because we haven't created that yet, but we'll get to it. So let's create this Quarkus trigger. Okay, so now we need to have our functions, right? I've got a directory here called nodefunc, and I believe it's empty. Yeah, there's nothing there. I'm going to use Appsody stacks to generate a function template. So Appsody init, and I'm using this Boson /node.ce functions stack, which is an experimental stack that I've been working on. So we'll just create that here in the current directory. And as you can see, it just pulls down some template files, right? And we've got our regular Node.js project here. You can look at package.json and see that there's some tests already included, and we can run it locally, but by doing npm install. And then I can run npm test and see it testing. Yep, so we've got integration tests and unit tests. And then, well, here's the thing. I can actually run this locally if I want to, but we don't need to see that. What I want to do is look at the index.js that was generated. So here we're just returning a promise that doesn't really do much. I've actually created a file here that's got the return value that I like, and we'll look at that in a second. Let's go back to the index.js file, and we're going to replace this return promise with this one. So this promise that we're going to return is a cloud event type function response, and the source is nodefunc. If you recall, our Quarkus trigger is listening for these kind of functions. And all it does is it receives a cloud event, prints some stuff out to the command line, and then responds with a cloud event. I can do Appsody build, and this will build my project or build my function, push it to quay.io and give it a Docker container tag or an image tag. And that'll take just a second for the image to get created and all the various labels to get applied to it. Now it's pushing it up to quay.io. Okay, and now I've got my image created. It's sitting up there in Quay.io, but I still don't have my Knative service. So let's just use the kn command line to create this node func service. So you can see we're using kn service create. We're giving it a name, node func. We're telling it the image is the image that we just pushed, and that container image, when you spin it up, is going to be listening on port 8080. So we can do that, and it'll take just a second for that service to get spun up. And just a second longer, hopefully. Okay, there we go. So I can actually just go to this URL if I want to and see how that looks. And we get back no cloud event received. That's because we only expect cloud events. So if I do oc get pods, I can see that my node function is running, and I can do oc logs, and got a little thing here that'll just get the logs from the user container, and we can see that it's now receiving cloud events from the cron job source. That's in the logs. So that's pretty cool. All right, so we've got that cron job event source running. We've got the trigger passing those events along to our node function, which we just created very quickly using Appsody init, created the image using Appsody build, and then created the Knative service using the kn command line. Now, what about our Quarkus image? So I've got a directory here, Quarkus func, and I believe it should be empty. Yes. I'm going to use the Appsody command line again, but this time I'm going to create a Quarkus application, and it's just going to generate a template again. And then I can do Appsody build, same thing. And again, I could run this locally if I want to. That's the sort of day-to-day developer experience would just be running this thing locally. But what we care about in this demonstration right now is how all this stuff gets deployed as a Knative service that can respond to cloud events. And while this is happening, we can take a quick look at the Quarkus function and what's going on there. So with the Quarkus function, it's got a little bit more sophistication, I suppose. We've got greeting functions, and we don't want to see that. We've got greeting functions, and as you can see, it's just annotated with the func annotation. And it takes an identity. So one of the cool things about the way the Quarkus function stack works is that if the data from your cloud event can be converted into a POJO, plain old Java object, it will do so. So we've got an identity. It has a name. So if we look back at the index.js file, we can see that we actually are sending in the data field here a name. So the Quarkus function will know, all right, this is a POJO. I'm going to generate this name object or this identity object, and that's the thing that's going to be passed in to my Quarkus function. So it's been created. I'm going to do Appsody build. Oh no, we just did that. I'm going to do kn service create Quarkus function, and I'm going to just I'm setting min scale here because Knative services can be scaled down to 0 if they don't receive any incoming requests. We didn't do that for the node function because we know that there's a cron job event source generating an event every minute that function is going to be responding to. So we're going to create this service Quarkus function, or Quarkus func, I should say. And again, it'll take just a minute for the service to spin up. While that's happening, I'll show you a couple of other neat things that the Quarkus function framework can do. You can specify here we go, primitive functions. So I could set the primitive function to be the function that my incoming request responds to. So it can take a string or an integer, for example. And what's happening is Quarkus will look at these application properties and will export the function that you specify. So in our case, we're exporting the function greet. There we go. Let's go back and look and see. Yes, okay, so our Quarkus function is now deployed as a Knative service. And I can do kn service list to see that. And I can do oc get pods. And we can see here, this is the Quarkus pod that's running. So let's look at oc logs and let's look for the Quarkus container and see what's happening. Okay, so we can see that it has been installed and has started up. It might take a minute for these the node function to send an event. Let's take a look here. So it should be happening pretty soon. Let's look at the Quarkus function again. Aha! And here we go. We can see that the node function received an event from the cron job event source. It responded to that an event with an event itself. And then the Quarkus function received that event from the node function and basically just logged here hello from func A, that's the node function. And then we've got the message hello from the cron job, which was the data that was sent. Remember, func A was what we sent as the name value. So that's what we've got here for function as a service so far, built on top of Knative, using Knative events and Knative services. I'm looking forward to continuing this development, consolidating the command lines so that we're not having to use multiple command lines like Appsody and KN, for example, but that it could all be handled through one CLI or maybe even your VS Code plugin. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.